Now we got the boomer chair back out. And this time, just to add authenticity to the whole thing, I have my boomer notebook, along with my boomer way of making notes, and my indecipherable boomer handwriting. And I have this because I'm trying to keep this video kind of concise instead of running off on all of the different tangents that I usually run off on. I've also got other props too. I have my American flag, because for the very first time in my boomer life, every time I do one of these videos, there's always people in the comments like, "You're not a boomer." Yeah, man, I was born in 1962. I made the cut by 2 years. I'm an actual boomer. But yeah, for the first time in my boomer life, I actually see hope for American manufacturing. There are things happening right now that will bring, or hopefully bring, manufacturing back to this country. Hopefully revive the hundreds, if not thousands, of dead cities and towns that are littered across our landscape that used to be part of that great industrial complex that was the US of A. But I don't want to get too far off. I'm trying to eliminate tangents today. But this is a follow-up to the last video we did on throwaway cars, and where we talked about, and we've been talking about on this channel for years now, runaway rampant technology and the fact that new cars are not repairable and they're not intended to last long enough to find that third tier buyer, right? I don't want to rehash the whole thing. You can go back and watch the last video. But basically, the way cars are built today, they don't have the long-term survivability that allows the lesser of us to keep a car nursed along, service it themselves, or bring it to their local mechanic and say, "Hey Bob, my car's got a misfire, can you fix it?" And Bob's like, "Yeah, drop it off in the morning." No, today's cars, they got to be hooked up to the machine. It's all done through software, and it's just absolute insanity. Planned obsolescence, yes, that's part of it. And it's been going on for a really long time. But again, today we've got things, there are things at work, there are things that are happening that you may or may not agree with, but there's a bigger picture, and the things that are happening are intended to bring manufacturing back to this country, to revive our industry. Is it going to work? I don't know. I hope that it does, but we actually have a chance. So let's talk about cars. And now normally I never ever ask anybody to share any of my videos or anything. I never go for that, like, subscribe, share. To me, that's so classless. If you like something enough, you'll like it. And if it talks to you, you'll share it. You don't need me prompting you to do that, right? This time, a little bit different. I want you to share this video, because here's the thing. For the first time in human history, because of this thing called YouTube, us common people, you and me, actually have a voice that the powers that be listen to. Never before in history. In the old days, in the boomer times, you'd write a letter to your congressman and put a stamp on it and send it off and say, "Here, here's my idea, here's my revolutionary thing." Or you send it off to the White House, you put the stamp on it and go. Nobody paid any attention to that stuff. But today, because of YouTube, because of the reach, people in charge, people who make the rules, who make the decisions, actually do listen to us if we talk in a big enough number. So if you agree with anything I'm saying in this video, if you agree with the basic premise, share it, and hopefully it does get to people who make decisions and can make things happen. So, again, we've talked about the runaway technology, the disposable nature of today's cars. And when I first started talking about this stuff, when I first started YouTube 7 years ago, people are like, "Oh, he's out of his mind. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Today's cars are just fine." No, everybody's catching on now. Just do a search. You're on YouTube, right? Do a search on disposable cars, or throwaway cars, or unrepairable cars, planned obsolescence in cars. And it's not just cars, it's across the board. I know, it's farm equipment, it's appliances, I know, it's everything, right? But we're in the world of cars here, so we talk about cars, mostly. It's countless videos. the cost of these things, the complications of these things, mechanics running away and hiding from the industry because, and I ran away and hid from the industry years ago because I saw the handwriting on the wall. It's bad. So what can we do? What proactive steps can we collectively take to maybe affect some change? And again, it's possible now because of things like YouTube. All right. So let's not get political. I do not want to get political. This is not about politics. This is about situations, okay? Keep this in mind. It's about situations. Forget about who's in control. In the recent past, our government has offered much in the way of stimulus and incentive and regulation to encourage or to force the use of electric cars, right? The transfer to an all-electric thing. That's over. Now, again, see, anytime I do a video on this subject, I've always got the people in the comments, electric cars are the future. They have fewer moving parts. They're more reliable. How do you even address this, okay? Electric cars do not work in hot climates. They do not work in cold climates. They don't allow uninterrupted long distance travel for anybody that's trying to keep some sort of schedule. Range anxiety is something that affects the psyche of every single person out there driving an electric car. I'm not saying they don't belong. Yes, electric cars are good for some circumstances, but not for all. And they cannot replace the internal combustion engine. Then you get the other people, electric cars have fewer parts, fewer moving parts, so they're more reliable. You got really smooth brains, you people who are, yes, they have one or two electric motors, okay, that have very few moving parts. But what about that big, huge 2,000-pound non-moving part that's extremely complicated, that has more internal components than any internal combustion engine car does, that literally degrades from the minute you plug it in the first time until it finally runs out of poop 5 years, 6 years, 7 years down the road, and then costs more to replace than the entire car is worth. The battery is what I'm talking about here. No, they are not more reliable. No, they do not have fewer parts. They have fewer moving parts, but they have more parts and more sophisticated electronic infrastructure to keep it all from flambeing you. Electric cars are not the answer. Let's go back now. In recent times, in recent years, due to influence that should not have been exerted via NGOs onto government regulatory agencies, the move towards electric cars was subsidized by the government. Now those days are over. They're not being subsidized anymore. But the government is able to subsidize, to help the auto industry to move in whatever direction the government feels that it should move in. Now, if the government is truly for the people, the government may want to subsidize or incentivize, help along the manufacturers or even perhaps startup companies to create cars for the average person, for people who want to keep their car beyond its, let's say, normal warranty period, who love their car and want to keep it for life and maintain it forever, right? Or who just want to keep putting food on the table. So, they're going to keep the old beater alive. They're going to throw a water pump at it. They're going to throw brakes on it. They're going to do whatever. And they're just going to keep it moving year after year after year. That breed of car has become extinct as far as new car production goes. They're rapidly fading into the distant past because everything built in the last 10 years or so, thereabouts, ballpark, it's got CAN bus systems, and you need to be a software engineer to even begin to crack, because you've got parts that aren't interchangeable because they're VIN locked and all of this. Utter, complete insanity, right? What kind of car do we need, right? If we had to put a name on it, what would we call this car, this new breed of car? Let's call it the Freedom Mobile, for lack of better words, right? And no, I'm not a marketing person, but let's call this the Freedom Mobile. What kind of vehicle would give you and me and the average person who isn't rich, who works for a living, who doesn't want to be a slave to always making a car payment, always being beholden to the dealer for repairs and all of that insanity. Somebody who wants to be independent and actually keep their car, service their car, and freedom. Right? The person who's looking for transportation freedom, the way we've traditionally had it in this country. What kind of car, what would the criteria be? I've got my notebook, and I have just a few key points to get the discussion started. But it's only to get it started. I don't want it to end here. I want you to, in the comments, I want you to throw your 2 cents in. If you're a fellow YouTuber, right, and this thing rings a bell, throw your 2 cents in, right? We can actually make something like this happen. There could be, let's say, a Tesla Motors. I don't want to hear about the Elon shit. That has nothing to do with this, okay? There could actually be a Tesla Motors that's dedicated to this type of car. All right, so I made notes. I've got 3 key points that we'll start the conversation with, okay? And I'll explain my perspective on each of these things. The Freedom Mobile. All right. Now, this has been done before. It's been done by many manufacturers over the course of the history of the automobile. Nobody's really doing it now. Now, the one example of this type of car, and what I'm talking about is a modular design. The example that pops into my head is the Corvair. Now, a lot of you younger guys have no idea what a Corvair is. Go ahead and Google it. And I'm not suggesting that we build air-cooled pancake sixes. No. I'm talking about the concept of the Corvair, okay? So the Corvair was originally, it was built by Chevrolet back 1959 or 1960, they introduced the car. And it was a platform, it was a rear engine platform that could be morphed into any shape, and it was, okay? So off this one basic Corvair platform, you got the 2-door, you got the 4-door, you got the station wagon, you got a pickup truck, and you got a van. All of those vehicles were built off of the same mechanics, the same basic platform. There's no reason that can't be done today. The thing about building a car off of a modular platform is that it makes parts easy. It makes componentry easy. It's easy to swap an engine from one vehicle to another. It's easy to swap a transmission from one vehicle to another. It simplifies things. I would say that the ideal vehicle would be something based off of a modular platform. It shouldn't be a freak show. Remember when electric cars first started coming in and they had to make them look as freakish as possible because this was different. It was an electric car, so it's got to look Buck Rogers and all weird and stuff like that. No, our modular Freedom car should kind of look like more or less everything else out on the road. It shouldn't have any like crazy distinctiveness to it. But you could have a sports version, like for instance, you go back to the Corvair. They had a turbocharged version. They had a 4-carb version. They had a little economy version. You name it. They spun every type of idea off of this basic platform that they could. No reason that it can't be done today. All right, second point with this is going to be user serviceability. All right, now, I'm not stupid enough to think that everybody who buys one of these cars is going to want to service it themselves. That's never been the case. A portion of the population serviced their own cars, but most people brought it to their local mechanic and just kept it going, or the guy down the street that fixes cars, okay? The point is, all of it was serviceable. Everything was serviceable. You didn't have to go to the dealer. You didn't have to replace big chunks to get to a little, right? You know, a switch goes bad, you could change the switch. You didn't need a whole module. It wasn't all interconnected and all craziness like that. User serviceability, completely independent from the dealership. So once you buy this thing, that's it. If you choose Freedommobile, if you choose to never see the dealer again, if you choose to never subscribe to the dealer's services again, That's your choice. It's your freedom. You can do that. So that would be an extremely important aspect of this car, of this Freedom Mobile. In designing this, okay, now, you know, manufacturers use focus groups. Every single thing they do, they bring a focus group in. They want to name a car, they bring a focus group. They want to pick colors for a car, they bring a focus group. They want to put interiors, they bring a focus group. Okay, well, our car would be designed, in addition to all of those focus groups, obviously, because you've got to appeal to the wide variety of you know, consumer. But our car would be based on, I'm reading from my notes here, focus groups of seasoned independent mechanics. Okay? So instead of just having a bunch of, like, you know, soccer moms sit around and decide, you know, what shape and position for the cup holders, right? The foundation of this car, of our Freedom Mobile, would be based on input from seasoned mechanics. People who've been in the field, seasoned independent mechanics, who've been in the field for a period of time and know the pitfalls of modern cars. And what works, what doesn't work, what is serviceable, and what is throwaway. You want this to be as serviceable as possible. So that's important part number 2. Now, number 3, this is really important. This is probably more important than the first 2, right? And this is revolutionary. Maybe, no, maybe not. It's been done before, but never purposefully. A freeze on mechanical changes for 10 years. Okay? So, from the year that this car is introduced, for 10 years forward, no mechanical changes. What it is what it's going to be. Now, you could change the body style, you could change the trim, you could change the colors, you could throw different nameplates on it, you could change all of those things, put different wheels on it. It doesn't make any difference. But engine, transmission, fuel system, ignition system, suspension, brakes, all of that stuff, okay? A freeze for 10 years. What it is what it's going to be. So let's say the axles from the last model built are going to be exactly the same as the axles from the first introduced. Does that make any sense? Complete interchangeability. One of the big problems, one of the like the elephant in the room, one of the unspoken issues with just really any production, any mechanical production thing that goes on for years is engineers. Now, I'm not faulting engineers per se, okay? In other words, the engineers as individuals are fine people. I know engineers watch this channel. I get comments from them all the time. You're fine, man. I'm not bitching about the engineer. But here's the unspoken problem with this, okay? The engineer always has to earn his keep. Every year he has to make himself useful. He has to justify his income. So let's just say, for example, that they have perfected the O2 sensor. Just to pick one part out of 100,000, okay? You've perfected the O2 sensor. This thing it cannot be any better. You've got to make some kind of change to it in order to stay relevant. Something, anything, the thread diameter, the thread pitch, the material that the thing is made out of, the pigtail connector, something, you got to change something, right? And then you're working with somebody else who has to make a change also. So you're working with the engineers that work on the exhaust development, so they have to come up with a different bung for the exhaust. And you're working with the wiring harness guys, and they have to come up with a different connector and different gauge wires, and whatever it happens to be. You have to do this every single year. And all of the engineers around you have to do this every single year to justify your existence. Not in this car, okay? The Freedom Mobile means once, for a 10-year period, once a system is designed and developed for that car, it is left completely unchanged for a period of 10 years. At the end of 10 years, redesign the whole car from scratch. That's fine. But the point is, 10 years of production, and then probably another 10 or 20 years beyond that, you'll have readily available, cheap, interchangeable parts. And this is what the common person, the kid just starting out in life he's just got to get to school, he's just got to get to work, the family that's just struggling to keep food on the table, you know what I mean, and just get the kids to school and get to work. This is important to them. Like, this will ensure their financial, I don't want to say freedom, but stability going forward, right? They can service it. They can predict that those parts are going to be there. They're building cars today. Literally, current year cars that they can't get replacement parts for. How is this even remotely possible? But it is, and it's the reality today. People buy brand new cars and they're laid up for months at the dealers because they can't get replacement parts. We've covered all of this in previous videos. But to me, that's really, like, number one, don't change this thing and keep it all interchangeable. Everything from one model, you got the model that's the sports model, and you got the model that's the pickup truck. Well, they're going to use the same transmission. They're going to use the same axles. They're going to use the same brakes. They're going to, overbuild everything to its highest performance application. Because yes, you can have high performance versions of this, and keep it consistent through the run. It saves the manufacturer a ton in terms of, like, research and development and tooling. And there's a zillion reasons to want to try to keep something consistent like that. The availability of parts going forward is, if American manufacturing really has a chance to make it in these tough times that we're in, and these tough times are going to get tougher, the availability of affordable replacement parts and serviceability is of utmost importance. You know, this related but kind of not related, but Honda. Okay, so now I've always been I used to be a very big fan of Honda machines. Not only because they were engineered to a point of excellence, but there was a philosophy that went with Honda that was one of the things that created the foothold it had in this country and in Europe. So Soichiro Honda, Mr. Honda himself, the guy who founded the company, when he started exporting his machinery to the United States and to Europe, he had a philosophy, right? The philosophy was, buy a vehicle from me, buy a bike from me, and I will supply parts forever. Okay, this was something that got him in the door, because at the time, you got to go back to this, late 1950s, early 1960s, people were very leery of buying anything that came from a place like Japan. Because, okay, great, it runs now, but how am I going to get parts for it, down the road? Well, he made the promise that if you bought something from him, he would supply parts forever, right? That was one of the big things that got Honda in the door and created the manufacturing monster that it became. Now that policy doesn't exist anymore. But I can tell you firsthand, and this is like one of the reasons why I was a fan of Hondas, is that back in the 1990s, early 2000s, I was doing a lot of motorcycle work. And I came across a lot of vintage Hondas. And I remember picking up a really clean CB450. 1966 it was, 66, 67, I don't know, it was really clean. But the motor was locked solid, everything was rusty inside, and I wanted to save the bike. I wanted to redo everything. Well, the bike at the time was over 30 years old, but I was able to go to the Honda dealer and buy every single part that I needed for it right over the counter, just as if I was going to buy parts for a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, bike, motorcycle. I was able to get the stuff for the CB450 because of that promise that Mr. Honda made. Buy it from me and I'll supply parts forever. And then somewhere along the line they lost that because it's no longer true. But during that period of time that I was playing around with this stuff early, late 1990s, early 2000s, yeah, it was. And it made me feel really like, I felt gratitude towards the company for that. It's like, yes, I love this thing and I want to love it for a long time. And look, you're going to give me the parts for it, so you love it too. Look, we're all in this together. You see what I'm saying? It was like, I know, I'm running off on a friggin' tangent again. But you get the general idea. We need that kind of mentality back in manufacturing, back into the machinery that you, me, and the world relies on to get to from point A to B. All right, so those are my 3 key points right? Modular design, user serviceability, and a freeze on mechanical changes. My criteria for what the Freedomobile would be. And like I said, there's no reason the government was ready to subsidize all, and they did, subsidize and create grants and whatnot for every possible advantage to electric vehicles while handicapping internal combustion vehicles every possible way. Those days are over. That's done. It's over. Now we're going to move forward. This is the way I think we got to move forward. If you agree, say so in the comments. Put your thoughts in the comments. Share it, right? Let's get this around. Let's get this discussion going, and perhaps we can actually see something like this come to pass. It is possible. Let's see what happens. I'll see you tomorrow.